Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to go over how to replace a battery tray in a VW Bug, doing a little bit of welding. Click, click. It'll spark a little bit later. This welder, my friend Stan let me borrow. And some of you who may know me may think, wow, I didn't know you could weld. You know what? I don't know how to weld. Just watch a bunch of YouTube videos and you'll figure it out. That's kind of what I did. I jumped ahead a little bit for this repair. I've had a little bit of practice, but hardly any, like a month. So it's a little trial and error and a couple of holes blown out here and there, but then patched. So I want to just show you the process of how I learned how to replace that and what's involved. So let's jump in. So the car we're working on is the 68. If you recall, that's the one we got in Santa Barbara that had been sitting in this wet locale for over 20 years, gaining lots of water. And when we picked up the Bug and got it home, we found this little reservoir in the battery tray. The battery normally goes there. And, it looks pretty full, but we thought it wasn't leaking. So we went ahead and sucked out all the water. And after a little bit of wire wheel to it, notice the little pinholes after all. Once you take away all the flakiness, yeah, it became like a little sieve, a little screen door of sorts, letting air, water, and all the elements right through that little panel where the battery is supposed to go. But that's part of an entire floor pan. How are we supposed to swap out just that little piece there? Lucky for us, you can buy a replacement panel for just that part, as it's a pretty common failure actually. So it's field trip day. Today we're over at Caddy Shack, which is way down there, buying our new pan replacement for the left side and then the battery section in the back. Now that left side full floor pan, that's going to be for another video. That's a pretty involved process. Today we're just doing the battery tray. We're going to remove this metal tube first. It's welded onto the section there. This holds the cable that controls the heater vents. I highly recommend, if you don't have one of these, this is a Dremel tool. You can get one of these at Home Depot, and there's these quick, easy swappable discs as you burn through them pretty quickly doing stuff like this. But it's handy around the house for all sorts of things, cutting broken nails and, I don't know, whatever. Whenever you need to cut something metal, these are really handy. So pick yourself up one of those. So here, just going to spend a little time cutting off this tube. Next step is, just to kind of hold this up to the space, see how much I need to cut, see where it's going to fit and how it's going to fit. It's not a perfect drop-in fit. There's going to have to be a little modification, but just want to get an idea of what we're starting with and how it's going to line up. So I used the wire wheel to kind of grind away the metal to see what was solid still and what was rusty and needed to be replaced, and came up with this boundary, which is how I knew that battery tray would be all I needed to replace, as the rest of the pan was pretty solid metal still. And so next, just wanted to mark out with some duct tape here how and exactly where I was going to be cutting through the middle, just so I didn't have to freestyle it, and make some nice straight lines. So we're going to go ahead and use the angle grinder here with a cutoff wheel to cut out the big chunk of metal so that we can put in the new one. Here's an example of what this tool is in particular, in case you want to get one. And here's some cutoff discs to cut it off. This is just one of the many tools that are handy for doing work like this. I'll go ahead and show you the different tools I'm using as we go along.
using one of my favorite tools. I switch back to the Dremel tool here just to make a little more fine cut, as the overlap at the end of these cuts here is kind of fine. I didn't want to go hacking through there with the big grinding wheel. Just got a little splinter there to snip off. You can see it's not a perfect fit, so I got to, get a little forceful with making it fit before we start welding. I think y'all know what this is. So this is the same tool I was using before, the angle grinder. However, these have swappable discs. So I've swapped out the cutting wheel for what's called a flapper disc. This is something I didn't even know existed. So this is a wheel that is made up of a stack of sandpaper. So notice how they're just kind of laid on side by side. You call it a little flap disc because you're kind of flapping a bunch of sandpaper against the surface. And it's a really handy way to not have to hand sand a surface to get it to be sanded quickly. So yeah, this is one of my new favorite tools that I didn't even know existed. So I didn't have the camera set up for the very beginning of this, but you can see at the front there I got a couple spot welds tacked there. So don't worry, there's lots of welding to be seen in the next couple minutes. So I'm just going to work my way around here, starting kind of slowly so you can see my thinking process. And then as we get going, I'll kind of speed it up because, you know, it probably took me hours to do this. You don't need to watch that in real time, so enjoy. So here I'm just removing a little bit of the edge of that replacement piece. It's just a little taller than I need, and I kind of want to keep as much of the original good German metal as they say you should do. So just trimming it back a bit, you know, trying to get off that little piece so I can use a lower part of it for connecting to the original four-pan. So I'm pressing down with the screwdriver to make sure there's as close contact as possible between the two metals so there's no gap when trying to weld those pieces together. So the idea here, according to many YouTube videos I watched, is to kind of move along and do different areas and kind of fill in the gaps and keep kind of jumping around so that the heat doesn't concentrate in a particular area, because that can cause the metal to warp. So that's what I'm doing, just kind of jumping around a little here, a little there, and just working to keep filling in the gaps. It's not going to be a continuous solid weld all the way around when I'm done, but I just want to make sure it's fairly gap free so that it'll keep moisture from potentially ever entering, and also keep the structural integrity of the metal. So now we've switched to a third disc type for the angle grinder, and this is actually a grinding wheel or a grinding disc. Look how thick this is compared to the original cutting disc I used the first time. So this you kind of use on the flat side of it, and I'm just grinding down the tops of the welds so they're not so bumpy like a caterpillar, just to make it, you know, just a little nicer. And jumping ahead in time here, we've pulled the car up on its side so I can get to the underside. Since it's an overlap weld job, I want to be able to get both seams. But first we have to go ahead and use the wire wheel here to give us a clean surface on the underside. You got years of muck under here that need to be kind of scrubbed off so I can get down to some bare metal. This is just a simple drill attachment that you can use. It's really handy. And now using my metal persuasion tool to help things line up a little bit better. And now to weld the underside. This will be quite a bit quicker than before because you more or less get the idea, but just want you to see the pattern I'm going through. This is also handy in case I sell the car someday. Somebody's going to be able to see that I really did weld this and didn't just duct tape it all together. Alright, taking a final look here after grinding and wire wheeling and welding, and have quite a bit of metal on here. I think we're ready for the next step. So we're applying a product called Seal here. This is for applying to bare metal, and it's also to be a rust inhibitor. So you paint this on and it should fight rust, and it even converts rust. If you do have rust, it'll stop it from rusting. So you put this pretty much underneath all the other things that you're going to do to it. And I'm going to go ahead and do it on both sides of the pan here. So putting it on the inside now, it's a pretty fascinating product actually. It besides smelling unique, it goes on white, but as it sits on rust, it'll turn black. So that's how you know it's working. It goes from white to black as it's converting the rust. If it doesn't go fully black, then they say put on a second coat. But in this case, I went on pretty heavy and it all ended up black after it dried. Since I had already wire wheeled the rest of the interior of the pan here, I went ahead and core sealed this as well. As you can tell, it's a little rusty. I just want to stop it for any future needs because this is going to be covered by a sound dampener and then carpet. So it's probably not going to see the light of day for a while, but I do want to prevent any rust from occurring. as it's not that convenient to change floor pans. So while I have the body off, it's easy to hit now. Once the core seal is fully cured after a couple days, we're going to put on this roof and flashing, and basically a seam sealer. The seam sealer is going to, well, as it implies, seal the seams. So the part that you're going to see here, I'm just putting it on the visible parts of the camera, but just using a caulking gun here. There's all sorts of seam sealers you can use. There's automotive specific ones, but watching one of the J-Bugs videos of them changing out the pans, this was a recommended product. And as long as you're sealing a seam with something that's waterproof and gonna last a long time, I'm pretty sure it doesn't really matter which one you use. You can go on forums and everybody has their own recommendation, but this one's handy and it was at Home Depot, so I went with this. And then just using, definitely with a glove, smoothing this out so it's nice and smooth over the seam. So I went ahead and did this for the outside here underneath, and then also fully around the inside as well. And once this dries, it takes a week to dry. So once this fully dries, we can go ahead and give it a final coat of paint.
All right, here we go, the grand finale. Look at that, nice and smooth, fully rust preventatively painted, a nice matte black. Gonna end up doing all the other part of the undercarriage once I get it up on its side again. But for now, we're just ending this with the battery tray on the top side being finished. There'll be another video when we get to the other left side, driver's side, replacing the entire pan. We still have to paint and seal and core seal that. Then you'll see the entire undercarriage and all the floor pans fully painted and ready to go to start putting this car back together.